Before we begin the video, if you haven't yet, come on down and join my Discord server. Link is down in the description. Hello guys, I'm super excited to be reviewing episode 4 of Seabound 5000 Fathoms Down. Nia is still very mad at Maya. She feels like she doesn't really understand that she's grown up now. And so, yeah, she kind of gets very mad at Maya and everyone hears. So yeah, they decide to send Nia and Maya to investigate the source of the power, which is nearby, and they use the Hydrobex. So yeah, there is this really good scene where basically Maya talks about the emotional pain of having to leave Kai and Nia. They arrive at this temple where the source of the power is, and inside is actually Wojira. The Merlopians, led by Kalmar, are trying to reawaken her by creating, I guess, amulet replicas, and eventually Nia and Maya's cover is blown. They are defeated by Prince Kalmar, who expresses happiness that he has found the Master of Water. This episode is so good. Where do we even start? Well, the Maya and Nia dynamic was already good. It gets a lot better here. And I feel like it's so good because in this episode, you really learn more about Maya's side and how she's really been through a lot. And obviously, it was very emotionally draining on her to have to be separated from her children. And Nia just doesn't really seem to get that. And there are these two excellent scenes, one at the start, one at the middle, between her and her mother. And they're very emotional scenes, I have to say. The emotion of writing is just so good. And I also really love how the backstory, the backstory of Ray and Maya and their kidnapping is so relevant to this season. It really makes you look at Crux and Acronics and that backstory from season 7, which honestly I felt like wasn't really the best, but this season really improves that. So kudos to this season definitely for taking something from season 7 and making it a lot better. Maya has definitely improved in this episode compared to the past two. She feels more complex and less stereotypical. She feels more serious. She has a lot more depth and emotion. And the voice acting is great, especially when she talks about having to make a sacrifice. You can really feel the emotion. This feels like the Lou and Cole story from season 1, which was fantastic, but stretched out a lot more and obviously much more important to the overall story. And then the other highlight of this episode is the introduction of Prince Kalmar. He's very good. He comes off as very intimidating and very motivated as well. I really like his design, and the voice acting is pretty good. But also we learn about his plan. His plan is to awaken Wojira, and the reason that this power surge occurred is because him and his minions have been constructing basically fake amulets. Also, we see Wojira in this episode, which was super cool. Definitely came as a shock to me. But I also, the soundtrack is so good. I mean, I feel like, to be honest, that goes without saying. The soundtrack is always great. And as usual, a masterpiece. Prince Kalmar's track that plays in the credits is very, very good. And then there's the ending of this episode where Nia is captured. I mean, this guy just feels so evil, Prince Kalmar. He feels evil in a very, I guess, cartoony way, compared to maybe a villain like the Skull Sorcerer, who feels more real. I mean, if a flying Skull Sorcerer with a talking skull can be real at all. But you know what I mean. King Vangelis wants money and is a corrupt king. I feel like that's kind of realistic. Whereas Prince Kalmar, on the other hand, the way he moves and talks, and he wants to awaken this ancient sea beast. I mean, I do prefer realistic villains, but I also don't mind at all. I mean, to me, it just matters if the villain is good. And so far, Kalmar is. I thought the ending was very good. Kalmar is, for some reason, interested in Nia's powers, which I find to be a great cliffhanger. I mean, this episode ends off so well and really leaves me hyped for next week's episodes. As usual, humor is good too, such as when the ninja pretend to do work when Nia comes in. But yeah, I mean, as for bad stuff, I just really have one complaint. Ray and Maya got forced into coming with Crux. They got kidnapped, but this episode kind of portrays it as a choice. And in the first scene, the first scene with Maya and Nia, she does actually say that they had no choice. But then in the other scene, the one in the middle of this episode, they do portray it more as a choice, which is just kind of wrong. Not only is it wrong, but it's also inconsistent with what they said earlier in the episode. It just doesn't really make much sense. So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's a great scene, but it would be wrong to portray it as a choice. They were forced to come, or else, well, Kai and Nia may not be alive anymore, so really not much of a choice. This episode reminds me a lot of Into the Dark, the second episode of season 13, which is an episode that I absolutely love. And I feel like the plot was similar. It was excellent. It is really well balanced. I mean, great character moments, but also great story moments such as the introduction of Kalmar. Characters, Nia and Maya are fantastic, their dynamics is great, but there's also Kalmar who is, well, he's introduced very well. Action was really good at the end of the episode, and also the stuff with the hydromex and the water is really creative. And then emotion, I mean, I've already talked a lot about the Maya and Nia scenes, they are just so well done. So I'm really happy to give this episode a 10 out of 10, which is my first since the finale of season 13. And yes, I will definitely be rewatching this episode a few times. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to leave a like, subscribe, share with anyone and everyone you know. Share your thoughts on the 4th episode, 5,000 Fathoms, down below, and I'll see you next time.